Good afternoon. My name is Abigail Salazzo. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day to join us for today's chapter chat. As a reminder, in order to avoid any background noise and distractions, we ask that you please mute your phone unless you have a question or comment. Also, feel free to use the chat function for those of you that have logged onto the web portion to ask questions or add comments. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to start with our objectives. And by the end of this program, participants should be able to identify the steps within the process of business writing, create a chapter profile and or history based off of the process of business writing, and identify best practices for award applications, as well as identify key tips for writing a professional cover letter and resume. So let's go ahead and we're going to start with the business writing process. First, we want to begin to prepare by identifying our objectives. What is it that we want the reader to know, do, or perhaps understand? Next, we want to identify who the reader is. Successful business writers know that the answers to who and what will lead to how. So target your audience and get to know a few things about them. Ask yourself some key questions. Who is going to read your document? Will it be one person or many? Are you writing a letter to a new member or a quarterly summary for the board? What information will they need? You also want to identify the scope of the piece. What kind of information is needed and how much in order to convey the purpose or objective of the written piece. And of course, depending on the piece you're writing, you may need to do some research. Are you looking to create a treasurer's or a committee report? Then you'll want to look into what was reported previously, what follow-up items need to be addressed, and what is the status of current projects. This really might be as simple as reaching out to other board or committee members to get this information. Or it might require more detail and backup, including historical information or supporting details to better help the reader understand your objective. It might also require you to do some internet searches, of course using only reliable websites, or even some reading. I, for instance, use a lot of our trade associations that are specifically tailored and used by nonprofit professionals. So again, feel free to use that for some of your research depending on the piece that you're writing in order to gather some more supporting information. And then once you have your information, you want to ensure it's written or organized in a way that makes sense to the reader. You may need to put yourself in the reader's shoes if you're not familiar with the subject. So you can ensure you have organized the information in an appropriate way and it's going to make sense to them as they're reading it. It might need to be organized chronologically, or perhaps you're addressing topics by importance based on the audience. Either way, be sure the flow is seamless and is easily understood by the reader. And the final steps are pulling it all together. You can start by beginning with a draft, really depending on what you're writing, if it's a report, an email, letter, etc. And then, of course, proofread, ensuring that the information is accurate and that it's error-free, either from spelling and or grammatical mistakes. And again, depending on what the piece is, you might have others read it, check it for errors. A second set of eyes is always a good idea, especially something that's going out to a many number of people or potential members or vendors, that kind of thing. We really want to make sure that it's error-free. And the process is really simple enough, as you can see here, but a well-written piece that's organized and error-free and easy to read, it's worth its weight in gold, and it really reflects well on you as a professional. So something to keep in mind. While that process might take a little bit more time, it's really worth it in the end. And now that we can identify these steps of the process of business writing, let's go ahead and apply it. And specifically, we're going to apply this to writing a chapter profile. Chapter profiles may not seem like business writing, but we can think of it as sort of a company profile. So if you were to go onto the ANFP website, one of the first things you would read is about ANFP, and this gives sort of the background of the historical information along with other data that's useful to prospective new members or even current members, as well as vendors. It can also be used as a marketing tool, depending on the tone and how you write the profile and what kind of language you use. But today, we're just going to focus on the chapter profile as an informational piece. Again, we want to begin to write what we want to determine our objectives. And in this case, we want to inform prospective members and vendors about our chapter. That's our objective for the chapter profile. And next, we want to begin researching for this piece. And here's a list of a few things you might want to consider including in the chapter profile. For one, the date your chapter was chartered, a very basic informational piece. Other historical information, who founded the chapter? When was the first meeting? If it's grown, how much has it continued to grow? Same with the number of current members or the number of growth, percentage of growth that your chapter has seen. You could also break this information down into membership type as well if you wanted to. Any significant achievements that your chapter has accomplished, maybe it's related to advocacy or improving your presence at the state, be sure you're highlighting these in your chapter profile. If you have annual events, whether it's a meeting, a fundraiser, or perhaps it's a charity event where your chapter gives back to the community, be sure you list that within your profile also. If your chapter's received awards, this is a great opportunity to name those awards and show off your accomplishments. Any noteworthy members or any noteworthy members, it's not only interesting, but it's also informational. It really helps to help paint the picture of your chapter and include some interesting information. So maybe you've had a member that's played a key role again in advocacy within the state, or perhaps they're nationally recognized in the nutrition food service field. Feel free to note that there, along with details and other supporting background information. And if you so wish, be sure to include your chapter goals. Where does your chapter see themselves in 5 years? Perhaps how they plan to get there. This is a nice way, again, to inform any new members or current members about what's ahead for the chapter in the next few years. And then anything else that you might find informative or that helps really give a clear understanding of who you are as a chapter. Business writing does not have to be boring. We just, of course, want to keep it informative and interesting at the same time if we can. And you might want to include some image and graphics, just like the ones you see here. It just really depends on the piece that you're writing, how it's published, and of course how you choose to use it. All right, so let's move on here to the awards applications. I think everybody's well aware there's several award chapters I can apply for, but we're going to start with the State Achievement Award since it's a required award by all chapters in order for them to be eligible for the rebate. The State Achievement Award is actually, I really want to point out here, is a really great planning tool for planning for the year ahead since it addresses what the chapter has accomplished and what they hope to accomplish in the coming year. And it's also a project that can be used as an exercise for the entire board. You can either delegate this, or if you choose to meet face-to-face, it's a great way to kind of have the board connect and go through these responses together. Perhaps it's even a great way to conduct your research and be able to gather and organize that information for your responses as well if you are meeting face-to-face as a board. And of course, when you're completing your responses, you want to be sure to give as much detail as you can, giving solid and accurate examples and responding in complete sentences. No yes or no responses. That should be a given, but every once in a while we do receive applications with those kind of responses. So this really doesn't give us much detail or information about what the chapter's been doing or what they plan to do. So now we're going to take what we've learned so far, not only with the business writing process, but some pointers that we're using for the chapter awards, and we're going to go ahead and go through an example. So here we have question number 3, the State Achievement Award. How will you promote meetings to your membership and other invitees at least 4 weeks prior? Now we can tell here from the question what our objective is, and that's to describe how your chapter is going to promote your meeting to membership or those outside of membership. We're going to need to begin to gather and organize our information for our response. And of course today, so for the sake of time and today during the program, we're going to pretend as if I gathered this information from my chapter. I've reached out to my board members, I've referred back to my marketing campaign, I've gone through our files to see what we've sent on to national, any email blasts that we've had, and I'm gathering this information because I want to be able to give solid examples as to how we're going to promote, how we have promoted our meetings, and so on. And so here, you're going to see the response that I've created. It lists how we're planning to promote the meeting in chronological order. It provides detailed examples and complete sentences. And once you've completed your responses, be sure to take the time to review and revise as needed. If you start early enough, you should give yourself there should be plenty of time for a couple people to review and edit that. So you're really giving your best responses as you can. And basically, overall, when you are preparing your responses and you're preparing the application, just keep the business writing process in mind. It's always a good place to go back to and refer so you are getting the information out there that you need to in the way that it needs to be written. And then, of course, just to review quickly, when we're preparing our awards applications, we're going to use the application as an annual planning tool, and it'll allow us to meet or even delegate the questions, meet as a board or delegate questions. And then, of course, we're adding as much detail and complete sentences as we can. And if you really wish, you might want to consider submitting supporting documents. This is a nice touch and really helps to paint a clear picture as to what the state hopes to achieve during the year or what they have achieved during the year. And I just want to take a minute here. Many of these tips that we've discussed are also included on the How to Prepare the State Achievement Awards document, which is available on ANFP Connect. Most of these pointers that we've discussed can really be applied to all of our awards applications. So keep that in mind if you're considering applying for any of the awards next coming year. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and switch gears. We're going to go over the basics of professional cover letters and resumes. And while I know some of you in your position have probably been with your company for a few years or maybe several years or maybe even longer than that, it's still always a good idea to keep your resume up to date. But first we're going to back up and we're actually going to start with a cover letter. A cover letter introduces you and your resume to potential employers. It's the first impression, so you want to make sure that it's absolutely perfect. Take advantage of this important first impression and prepare the reader for your application, starting with why you are writing or applying for the job. Also include why you're a good match. Why would you be a good asset for the job or the organization? And then, of course, simply, when will you follow up or contact them? And then be sure to do that. You may also wish to take it a step further and highlight any achievements that are related to the job description. So, for instance, if the employer is seeking someone who has supervised a team of 5 to 10 people, and you have experience of overseeing a team of 12, be sure you highlight that, as long as it's truthful. We never want to fabricate anything on our cover letters or our resumes. So we're going to look at a format for our cover letters, but we're going to take it from the top, and here we're starting with our contact information. Be sure you're listing your full name, your email address, phone number, and of course your credentials. And then be sure you really know who you're addressing the letter to. If a job ad doesn't give this contact name, go ahead and dig around the company's website or call and ask who you could submit your cover letter and resume to. And be sure to address it to that individual specifically. It's a really nice touch. Then from there, you want to start with your intro, again, by stating where you found the ad and explain how you would apply your knowledge or skills to better the facility or company, as you see here from this example. Next, you're going to want to inform the reader how your experience is applicable and why you would be a good fit for the position. This could either be listed in a paragraph format, or you can list detailed examples as bullet points, which that can oftentimes make the cover letter a little bit easier to read or scan for the hiring manager. You want to refer back to the job description to see if you have any specific experience that relates directly to the listed job responsibilities. This will really help to catch the eye of the HR or the hiring manager. Or if you have skills that you believe are transferable, go ahead and list those too. Next, you'll want to close the letter just reminding the reader as to why you want the position and why you would be a great asset. And then, of course, be sure to include the date you intend to follow up with them, and then actually do that. Mark your calendar, be sure that you're following up with them. End with your name and contact information again. I just want to point out this is just one way to write a cover letter. There's many different formats, many different styles, but this really encompasses all the basics that should be included. And it's worked well for me. It's proven to be successful for me. So if you choose to use that format, that's great. And last piece we're going to discuss today, we're going to cover resumes. And again, we're going to start with the very basics. When writing your resume, you'll always need to include the following 3 items: contact information, experience, and your education and credentials. And optionally, you can add a summary or objective statement if you wish, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper into each of these resume requirements, the basics first. Okay. So contact information, be sure to include your full name, phone number, email address, and of course your credentials. And for the email address, you want to make sure that you have a professional email address. I know some people like to use nicknames or certain dates in their email address, but I would suggest creating a new account specifically for job applications where you're using a professional-looking email address with either just your last name or perhaps your first initial and your last name, similar to those that you use at work. And be sure that you're including the same email on your cover letter as well. Next, you might want to include a summary or objective statements like the ones you see here. The first example here are simple phrases regarding your areas of expertise. It could be customer service, budget development, program management. Try to highlight these areas that are a good match for the position, but they also speak to your strengths. Or you might want to include a summary, and this is a great way to catch an HR manager's attention, and it usually consists of a few short sentences that summarize your experience and skills. And again, you want to make this relevant to the position you're applying for. Or you may choose to include an objective statement. However, I will say an objective statement is really better used for those that are just starting out in the field, and it helps them to clarify their personal intentions or goals if they've never held a professional position. And I would recommend using either just one of these, not all three, and definitely not two of them, just one. Really helps to highlight what your strengths are and hopefully shows that hiring manager that you'd be a great fit right off the bat when they see your resume. Okay, and so the following section, you want to include your work history and relevant experience in chronological order. It's certainly not the only resume format to list our work experience chronologically, but it is the most popular. There's also some skill-based resumes you could use. I know some people out in the creative writing or the creative arts field, they're using actually infographics, for their resumes. But I think within our profession, chronological order usually works best. One other piece of information I wanted to pass along that I've actually gotten from some of my mentors is I customize my resumes based on the job description. Under no circumstance am I advising anyone to fabricate any kind of work experience or skills or anything like that. However, you might find that one job description, they're asking for a candidate that may have experience in overseeing a budget of $500,000. And if you have this experience, highlight it. Be sure it's at the top of your list. While another job description could be asking for a candidate that has experience and demonstrates experience with food service management software, but they might not be looking for that budget management experience. So you really want to look through the job description thoroughly, really read between the lines, try to figure out what exactly it is that they're looking for that would make you a strong candidate. And if you have those skills and you have that knowledge and experience listed in your resume. Think of resumes, they're really not one size fits all. So something to keep in mind if you're in the job hunt currently. Another way you can format your work experience is to include achievements that are relevant to the position, not just the skills you currently obtain. So for instance, if you were able to reduce your patient meal delivery times, note that. Note how much time you were able to reduce them by, for how many patients. Give really solid examples. That's one way you could include your experience on your resume as well. And last, be sure to include your education, degrees, and/or your credentials and the year that they were acquired. And again, I just want to point out again that there are many different formats for resumes and cover letters, and these might not be best suited for you. You might have a different style that you like. However, these really do cover the basics, and whichever format you choose to use, you want to be sure that it's proofread. If you have another professional you can confide in and allow them to see your resume, allow them to proofread it too and give them pointers and give you pointers if necessary. It's always good to have somebody else looking over our work, especially when it comes to resumes or cover letters. Okay, so I want to just take the time to say thank you for everybody to join us. Please plan to join us for our next chapter chat, and we'll discuss leadership development, and that'll include board orientations, ethical practices, and board assessment. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.